In general, I think that like saving the environment seems like such an overwhelming task that people just want to check out. Like, I can't fix that problem, so I'm going to ignore it and do something else. My name is Jessica Price, and I live in Kennesaw, Georgia with my husband, and we have 2 children and 1 dog. We've always enjoyed the outdoors, so we hike and camp and backpack a lot. The first time I went to the hike-in, I just kind of fell in love with their mission. The people who run it are just amazing people, and so it became kind of my happy place.
The experience of the Linfoot Hike-In is rustic bed and breakfast, kind of the best way to describe it to people that are not familiar with it. Gives you the opportunity to hike 5 miles, check in at the inn with very little supplies. You really just need to change clothes and personal kind of toiletry items. So you don't need a big heavy pack, and we provide everything else for you, including dinner and breakfast. So it gives you a safe, soft opportunity to enjoy the wilderness.
You've got an actual building to stay in. You actually have a shower to take at night, which is, I think, a lot of the deterrence for people that aren't outdoorsy can go to a place like the Hike-In and experience what it feels like to be in nature without it being so scary.
I think the biggest draw for guests coming up to the Hike-In is the experience of getting away. See a lot of families coming up and kind of reconnecting with their children and family members without technology kind of being in between them a lot of times.
The idea for the Hike-In, for this backcountry lodge, was first brought up about 1980. This story goes like back and forth between having funding, not having funding, and so it was just like one thing after another, where at any point a million things could have derailed the whole project, and almost did at a lot of different points along the way. So if it wasn't for people really falling in love with this concept and championing it over and over and over again, it would have never existed. When they started construction, it was like the most rainy season they'd had in centuries. So the mud became this huge problem. It was already going to be difficult to build a backcountry lodge anyway, because they were trying to do it without impacting the environment. And there really isn't a facility like that in Georgia, definitely, but even in the United States, with education as their mission, being backcountry and mostly off-grid. The opening ceremony was on October 30th, 1998. It opened as the Linfoot Lodge.
So our mission statement is protecting Georgia's resources through education and recreation. And we try to do that with our tour. We talk about that education component, as well as the evening program is an education component. You did the recreation part when you hiked in and when you will hike out.
When the Hike-In was developed, 20 rooms was considered the max occupancy that could sustainably operate on. So there's no intention of ever adding rooms, even though a lot of times on holidays and weekends we could fill up 100 rooms if we had it, but that wouldn't be sustainable for our trails and overall operations.
Well, sustainability is our mission. Like, Hike-In's been on the vanguard for that. You know, we were a green building, and that was before it was cool to be green.
So it just really has always stood out as a model to what we should all aim to be before it was even like something that people were aspiring to.
We weigh any leftover food you leave on your plate at dinner, and if you get more than an ounce per 10 people, everybody gets a big smiley face or a frowny face up on our board. And the kids especially are just like scraping their plates with a roll just so it's like cleaned off.
Future conservation, education, sustainability practices that we're looking at going forward is we've got a major solar panel installation occurring, groundbreaking here hopefully within about the next month, called Above the Grid, and we hope to be able to get to about 75% solar generated energy at the end. So we're pretty excited about that going forward. Youth education is something that we all feel pretty strongly about. Less and less children are getting outside and experiencing wilderness areas and hiking. So we've developed the Outside School youth initiative to help get youth groups up to the Hike-In and hopefully have them volunteer as well with trail maintenance and conservation projects while at the end.
There are things that are going to be obvious as you walk through the tour and the signs on the walls, but there are things that happen behind the scenes that aren't as obvious to people. For instance, when they built it, it was designed so that there's no plywood that had to be cut. So the architect made it to fit, so there was no plywood waste. When you look at the design of the inn, it actually sits on stilts. And I love this image because to me, it's like the inn that has legs. And so I always feel like it tiptoed up the mountain and just kind of rested there. And I think that kind of speaks to its mission of having such little impact on the environment so that it works with the environment instead of a force against it.
One of the biggest things I try to get guests to understand is, take some of this home with you. We know not everybody's going to put in 6,000 square feet of solar panels when they get home, but composting your food waste is something you can do. Trying to use less resources on the front end and being mindful of that is something that can help everybody, especially our planet.
People make who we are, so not only the staff, but the guests who come up.
It's really nothing without the people coming, That 5-mile hike in kind of, keeps the riffraff out, except me.
When the hike-in first got started and the board had to be established to run it, people put up their own money, like thousands of dollars of their own money, and nobody knew if it was going to succeed or not. But they believed in the mission that much. Places like the hike-in are teaching people that we can do something. You don't have to dedicate your whole life to the environment to make an impact. And just know that there are little things that every person can do. It's not an impossible mission. It is worth pursuing, and people can make a difference.